We don't just take care of the car, we give back what it gives us. That's the motto of the Japanese mechanics we recently heard. And after thinking about it, we realized how true it really is. Most drivers, especially in the US, only start paying attention to fuel injectors when everything has already gone wrong. The car shakes at red lights. Throttle response feels annoyingly delayed. Fuel consumption goes up for no clear reason. And then the familiar sentence appears, "The injectors must be dying." The irony is that in many cases, it's not because the injectors are bad, it's because we only remember them once the problem has become big enough to be annoying. Meanwhile, the real secret lies in prevention, not last-minute repair. So let's go through 10 tips from Japanese mechanics and see what they know about car maintenance that most of us don't. PEA is a real cleaning chemical, designed to do what most other additives only pretend to do. Dissolve carbon, varnish, and gum right inside the fuel injectors. The place you never see, but the place that determines whether your engine is still alive and healthy. What makes PEA trusted by Japanese mechanics for decades is actually very simple. It works through chemistry, not luck. It travels through fuel passages so small the human eye can't see them, cleaning each injector tip without damaging metal, rubber, or sensors. No noise, no disassembly, no drama. Just performance returning to the way it was meant to be. If you pour PEA into a completely full tank, you've just turned a powerful cleaning solution into diluted water. If you pour it into an almost empty tank, there isn't enough fuel volume for the chemical to travel properly through the entire system. The Japanese method sounds boring, but it's extremely logical. Add it when the tank is between 1/4 and 1/2 full, then drive steadily for at least 20 minutes. That ensures PEA is evenly distributed through the injectors, fuel lines, and filtration system. As for frequency, the Japanese treat PEA use as routine maintenance. In places with very clean fuel, they may use it every 5,000, 6,000 miles. But in the US, where ethanol, blended fuels, and inconsistent quality are normal, every 3,000 miles is far more realistic. Not because American cars are worse, but because the fuel you're feeding them every day isn't nearly as clean as you might think. One important warning: not every bottle labeled fuel injector cleaner is PEA. Most cheap products are just light solvents, whose main effect is making you feel better for a few days. Some even leave behind residue, forming a thin varnish layer that quietly makes things worse. You're not saving money. You're just delaying the problem and paying for it later. If fuel injectors are considered the eyes that precisely spray fuel into the combustion chamber, then the throttle body is the mouth of the engine. And when that mouth is dirty, it doesn't matter how sharp the eyes are, the engine will still choke. If it can't breathe properly, don't expect perfect combustion. The throttle body is responsible for controlling the amount of air entering the engine with millimeter-level precision. In modern engines, the air-fuel ratio is no longer an approximation. It's an exact value constantly calculated by the ECU. When carbon deposits and oil vapors build up on the throttle plate, airflow becomes uneven. Sometimes there's too much air, sometimes too little, and suddenly the entire system downstream starts to fall out of rhythm. Idle becomes inconsistent. Throttle response feels dull. More importantly, combustion is no longer complete. And this is the part most people overlook. When fuel isn't fully burned, the leftovers don't just disappear. They travel back into the intake system, stick to the intake tract, and over time contribute to contaminating the very injectors you're trying to protect with premium fuel or expensive additives. In other words, a dirty throttle body can quietly sabotage your daily good maintenance habits. In Japan, the approach is completely different. They don't wait for the car to get sick before treating it. And they don't assume that touching the throttle body means tearing everything apart. Instead, they clean the throttle body right on the car, without disassembly, but with extreme precision. The process is simpler than you might think. First, start the engine and let it reach normal operating temperature. No revving, no playing with the gas pedal. Then, turn the engine off. Once everything has stabilized, remove the intake duct or air filter housing to expose the throttle body. At this point, they use only an intake cleaning spray specifically designed for electronic throttle bodies and sensors. And there is one almost unbreakable rule you should remember when applying this method. Never use carburetor cleaner. Not because it doesn't clean, but because it cleans too aggressively. These products can damage internal coatings, dry out rubber gaskets, and leave behind damage that you won't pay for until weeks later. During cleaning, they spray very small amounts. Open the throttle plate gently by hand. No forcing, no bending. The cloth is always a soft microfiber, never a rough rag or anything abrasive. The deposits that come off are usually black and wet, looking like oily charcoal. That's exactly what they are. Residue from incomplete combustion built up over time. When that layer is gone, airflow becomes so smooth that many people describe the driving feel as if the car suddenly got a few years younger. After reassembly, start the engine again. It may sound strange for a few seconds, and the RPM might rise slightly above normal. That's completely normal. The engine is burning off leftover cleaner and recalibrating itself. Japanese mechanics usually let it stabilize for a few minutes, then drive gently for about 10 minutes so the ECU can relearn the new airflow values. E10, E15, even E85 are nothing new in the US. Ethanol has become a default part of the fuel system, marketed as both economical and environmentally friendly. But ethanol has one personality trait that very few people pay attention to. It absorbs water extremely well, and it pulls moisture from the air, from storage conditions, and from the environment around your fuel tank. This is where the problem begins. Ethanol and water don't fully mix with gasoline. Under the right conditions, they start to separate. Gasoline oxidizes, ethanol pulls water into tiny droplets, and a fuel blend that was designed to burn cleanly turns into something unstable and unpredictable. The result? Deposits, varnish, and gum begin to form. Quietly, without warnings, they slowly attach themselves to injectors, fuel lines, and combustion chambers. From there, the familiar signs of decline start to appear. Hard cold starts, slight idle vibration, sluggish throttle response, gradually increasing fuel consumption. Things most drivers barely notice. Most people blame it on an old car, bad gas lately, or simply accept living with it. In Japan, they see this very differently. Ethanol itself isn't the enemy. Unstable ethanol is. And that's where fuel stabilizers come in. A proper fuel stabilizer has three main jobs. First, it slows down gasoline oxidation, keeping fuel stable for longer periods. Second, it prevents phase separation between ethanol and gasoline by binding water in a form the engine can still handle. Third, it reduces corrosion on metal surfaces throughout the fuel system. Put simply, it keeps fuel behaving like fuel instead of turning into a chemical experiment after a few weeks. The way Japanese mechanics use stabilizers is highly disciplined. They often apply them before winter, during the rainy season, or any time the car won't be driven much. For vehicles that mostly do short trips, quick runs to the store and back, or use high ethanol fuel blends, a stabilizer may be used every 1 to 2 tanks, not to fix a problem, but to prevent it from ever starting. Before we continue, please support us by hitting the subscribe button. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, and if you're part of helping us reach that milestone, we're truly grateful. All right, back to the video. If PEA additives are like a deep aggressive cleaning once deposits have already formed, then long-term detergent additives are more like brushing your teeth every day. No one waits for cavities before starting oral care, yet with engines, many people think the opposite. They wait until the car shakes, jerks, throws error codes, and only then look for a way to clean it out. The Japanese don't do that. They keep the fuel system clean while it's still clean. Long-term detergent additives are mild additives designed to work quietly through every combustion cycle. They don't attack hard, baked-on deposits like PEA additives do. Instead, they focus on preventing new deposits from forming. Every time you refuel, every time ethanol undergoes slight oxidation, every time fuel sits in the tank, thin layers of varnish and tiny particles begin to appear. They're not large enough to cause immediate problems, but they're enough to slowly reduce injector precision. And that's exactly what long-term additives handle day after day. The key here is how they use long-term detergent additives, usually once every 3 tanks of fuel, or right after a deep clean with a PEA additive. But the emphasis is on moderation. Not overusing them, not pouring them in every single tank. Using them too frequently, or choosing products that are too strong, can affect sensors, rubber seals, or alter the characteristics of the fuel mixture. You see, when long-term detergent additives are used correctly, the benefits don't arrive in a dramatic, shocking way. You won't suddenly feel like the car has completely changed overnight. What you get instead is stability. Injectors spray more evenly. Throttle response becomes smoother. Idle vibration is reduced. Random misfires become less frequent. Fuel consumption no longer creeps upward over time for no clear reason. And most importantly, the engine ages more slowly. High-temperature road. Flush is a method that uses the engine's normal operation to clean itself. No injector removal. No machines hooked up. No harsh chemicals. Just heat, airflow, and time, controlled correctly. Let's face the reality of many cars in the U.S. short trips. Traffic jams, constant stop-and-go driving, low RPM. The engine rarely reaches a stable temperature and load for long enough. What's the result? Carbon and varnish slowly build up on injectors, intake valves, and inside the combustion chamber. Not enough to trigger an immediate fault, but enough to make the car gradually feel sluggish, throttle response delayed, and idle slightly rough. Then people blame the fuel, the injectors, or the manufacturer. High-temperature driving targets this exact issue. The principle is very simple. Maintain stable, sufficiently high heat for a long enough period. Not aggressive acceleration, not red line therapy like some dangerous online advice. The Japanese approach is the opposite. Moderate RPM held steadily. First, the car needs to be in good condition. Proper oil level, no overheating, no unusual noises. If the engine is already sick, don't try to fix it by forcing it to run harder. But if the car is operating normally, this is where the technique works. On an open road, highway, or major route, hold the engine at a steady 3,000 to 4,000 RPM for 20 to 30 minutes. No sudden throttle stabs, no constant hard braking, no frequent RPM changes. The goal isn't speed, it's stability. At this level, combustion chamber temperatures rise enough to burn off soft carbon and varnish. Stable airflow and fuel delivery. Help combustion stay consistent, reducing the chance of unburned deposits flowing back onto injectors and valves. In other words, the engine self-cleans, using the conditions it was designed to operate under. This technique becomes even more effective when combined with other methods. After using a PA additive, or while running long-term detergent additives, a high-temperature road flush helps complete the cleaning process by burning off deposits that have already been softened, preventing them from reattaching. At its core, this method doesn't repair anything. It does only one thing. It restores cleanliness to the fuel system by cleaning it from the inside, under pressure, and operating conditions that closely resemble real driving. Over time, injectors and fuel lines don't just collect carbon, they also build up varnish from oxidized fuel, residue from ethanol, and thin films formed over thousands of heat cycles. Regular additives can soften some of these deposits, but they're often not strong enough to wash everything away. That's when the spray pattern starts to distort, fuel distribution becomes uneven, and the engine responds more slowly, vibrates lightly, or gradually consumes more fuel without throwing any clear fault codes. Pressurized cleaning kits are designed specifically for this situation. The fuel system is temporarily disconnected from the fuel tank. The kit is then connected directly to the fuel rail. Instead of gasoline, the engine runs entirely on a specialized cleaning solution. Once started, this solution is pushed through the injectors and fuel lines under pressure comparable to real fuel pressure. This isn't a soak and hope process. It's real circulation, under load and heat, just like normal engine operation. That's what allows deposits to be dissolved and flushed away, rather than merely softened and left behind. The process usually takes several tens of minutes, depending on the system design and how dirty it is. Throughout the procedure, pressure, flow rate, and temperature must be carefully controlled. For that reason, many people do not recommend DIY at-home attempts, especially for beginners. Incorrect connections, wrong pressure, or careless handling can cause fuel leaks, damage seals, or create problems more serious than the original buildup. Top-tier fuel isn't premium in a flashy marketing sense. It's fuel that meets a specific standard, requiring brands to add an advanced detergent package strong enough to prevent deposits from forming on injectors, intake valves, and in the combustion chamber. Not added for show. Not added just for advertising. Added so the engine doesn't contaminate itself from the inside. The principle is simple. Every time fuel is injected and burned, a very small portion never burns completely. If the fuel is clean and contains effective detergents, these leftovers are controlled and burned off. If not, they stick, forming deposits, then varnish, and eventually thin films that gradually destroy the injector's spray pattern. The Japanese understood this early on. They don't wait until injectors clog to clean them. They prevent deposits from forming in the first place. And top-tier fuel is the first line of defense. When this standard fuel is used consistently, injectors maintain an even and precise spray. No uneven spray zones. No large fuel droplets that cause poor combustion. The result is smoother engine operation, more stable idle, and a noticeable reduction in random misfires. Especially the infamous P0300 code that many American cars are all too familiar with. This is something many U.S. drivers overlook. Most mild misfires don't come from failed spark plugs or coils, but from uneven fuel delivery caused by deposit buildup. And once injectors have been dirty for too long, every solution afterward becomes more expensive. Top-tier fuel also serves as the foundation for the entire maintenance strategy. When the fuel is clean from the start, methods like PA additives, long-term detergent additives, or pressurized cleaning kits all work better and need to be used less often. The philosophy here is clear. Prevention is better than repair. Paying a few extra cents per gallon to avoid paying hundreds, or even thousands, of dollars for injectors, valves, or combustion chamber work. To them, it's not a cost. It's insurance for the engine. Of course, not all gas stations are equal. Choosing reputable brands certified as top-tier, such as Shell, Chevron, Mobil, Costco, and equivalent brands, matters. That's why the Japanese, and we as well, don't recommend chasing the cheapest price at the expense of fuel quality. Professional no-removal injector cleaning is a deep-level cleaning method that uses specialized equipment capable of precisely controlling pressure, temperature, and fluid flow. This is not a quick tip, and it's definitely not something you do in your driveway with a few Amazon tools. This is a process that Japanese workshops have used for years, especially for engines that have been on the road for a long time, where deposits are no longer just light dirt, but hardened varnish, gum, and stubborn buildup tightly bonded to the injector tips. This method exists because regular additives have limits. They work well for maintaining cleanliness when injectors are still healthy, but once the spray pattern is distorted and the injector tips are coated with a hardened film left behind by ethanol and low-quality fuel, pouring bottle after bottle into the tank is basically like using mouthwash when you already have severe cavities. The professional cleaning process begins by completely disconnecting fuel from the tank. The engine no longer runs on gasoline. Instead, specialized equipment is connected directly to the fuel rail and injectors. A dedicated cleaning solution is then pushed through the system at pressure equal to, or precisely calculated based on, the engine's real operating pressure. The key lies in control. The machine is designed to ensure the solution flows correctly through the injector passages, injector tips, and fuel lines at temperatures and flow rates strong enough to dissolve deposits without damaging seals, causing leaks, or interfering with sensors. The procedure typically lasts 25 to 40 minutes, depending on the level of contamination and injector design. When done properly, the results are very noticeable. Idle becomes more stable, and the engine stops vibrating for no reason at red lights. Throttle response becomes sharper, with no more annoying hesitation during light acceleration. Acceleration feels smoother and more linear. More importantly, fuel consumption becomes more consistent. No more days where the car sips fuel, and others where it drinks it like water. More efficient combustion also means fewer deposits forming later in the combustion chamber, creating a positive cycle for the entire system. In Japanese maintenance philosophy, this is an advanced step, not a starting point. It's used when preventive measures are no longer enough, but the situation hasn't reached the point where injectors must be removed for ultrasonic cleaning or replacement. Once the spray pattern is restored close to factory spec, injector lifespan is significantly extended and the need for invasive interventions drops dramatically. A carbon machine represents the highest level of no-removal cleaning available today. This isn't surface wiping. It's not a single-spot treatment. It addresses the entire carbon ecosystem inside the engine. Because carbon never exists in isolation. By the time it shows up on injectors, it has already been quietly spreading to the intake valves, throttle body, combustion chamber, pistons, sensors, and even the front section of the exhaust system for a long time. This system doesn't rely on disassembly or mechanical scrubbing. Instead, the machine introduces a special cleaning gas or solution into the intake system, where carbon accumulation is most severe. Under real operating temperatures, hardened carbon deposits are softened, their structure is broken down, and they are then burned off and expelled through the exhaust system. What matters most is precision. Pressure, temperature, and flow rate are calculated based on engine displacement, combustion chamber design, and engine characteristics. Not too aggressive to cause knock, not too mild where carbon only flakes a little and stays behind. The goal isn't to shock the engine, but to return it to a clean, balanced operating state. The cleaning scope of a carbon machine often surprises drivers the first time they hear about it. It doesn't just clean injectors, but also intake and exhaust valves, areas where carbon tends to build up heavily due to exhaust gas recirculation. The combustion chamber and piston crowns are cleaned, allowing combustion to occur more evenly. A clean throttle body and intake tract restore accurate airflow. Sensors related to the air-fuel mixture begin working as designed again. And even the front section of the exhaust system is treated, an area where carbon had been quietly distorting feedback data. One small but important detail, the recommended service interval is usually around 50,000 to 80,000 kilometers, depending on fuel quality, ethanol content, and driving habits. Vehicles that spend most of their time in city traffic, short trips, and constant stop-and-go conditions are ideal candidates. Especially cars that feel sluggish, lightly vibrate, or consume more fuel, yet haven't triggered any serious fault codes. If there's one single factor that truly separates Japan's runs forever engines from American cars that start vibrating, feeling sluggish, and throwing warning lights while they're still relatively young, it's not technology. It's not materials. It's regular maintenance. It sounds boring, and that's exactly why so many people ignore it. In Japanese engineering thinking, maintenance is not repair. It's a state of operation. The goal isn't to fix problems, but to keep the engine continuously at its optimal point, even when it appears to be running perfectly fine. And this is where the biggest cultural shock occurs, especially when compared to the deeply ingrained wait until it breaks mindset that many American drivers carry without even realizing it. The operating principle of Japanese-style maintenance revolves around three simple but extremely difficult words: continuous, consistent, and scheduled. Continuous means no dead gaps. You don't let an engine run tens of thousands of miles without care just because it still runs fine. Because deposits don't build up based on noise, they build up over time. By the time you hear or feel something, it has already passed the point where light intervention would have been enough. The Japanese maintenance ecosystem starts with the simplest and most underestimated element: fuel. High-quality gasoline with proper detergent packages is the first line of defense. Not flashy, but it determines whether carbon ever gets a chance to form in the first place. The results of maintenance done under the right philosophy don't show up in marketing numbers. They show up in how the car feels every single day. Injectors maintain the correct spray pattern and precise fuel delivery. The engine runs smoothly, with less vibration and fewer misfires. Throttle response is linear, without jerks or hesitation. More complete combustion also means lower indirect wear, something you can't see, but your wallet will definitely feel a few years down the road. In short, caring for fuel injectors the Japanese way isn't about tearing things apart just to feel productive. It's a disciplined, prevention-based system, and the reward for that discipline is clear. An engine that runs smoother every day, linear throttle response, stable idle, reasonable fuel consumption, and, most importantly, a quietly extended engine lifespan. Have you tried any of these methods before? And how did your car respond? Or are you still waiting for the check engine light to come on before paying attention? Drop a comment below and share your real-world experience. Finally, this video is based on public sources, vehicle manuals, and automotive research for educational purposes only, not to promote any brand. Always verify information, follow your vehicle's recommendations, and make informed maintenance decisions. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.